Yeah. Okay. Who else? Who else? Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Majeski? Mrs. Majeski? Oh. Yeah. That's a very good observation. At least at one point in our life, we've probably been all of these people. Anybody else? Brother Dan? Well, I think that's a very good point. A lot of religions are based upon a hierarchy, a secret knowledge. I have this status. I've earned this degree, and I lord over you. But the closer you get to Christ in reality, the more of a servant you should be. I came not to be Lord, I came to be a servant. And the way to greatness is servanthood. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it costs money, it costs time, and sometimes it's messy. Yes, ma'am? Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Very good. Very good. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Brother Blake? Yep. Yeah. So let's just, Will. It's a good point. The priest and the Levite knew better. They knew better. Very good point. So let's just talk about each one of these individuals. The first, the traveler, which is verse 30. Let's read his account again. Here's this traveler. A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and look at what befell him. He fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment, and wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now this is a picture of somebody who's been abused, okay, who's been taken advantage of. We could say that it's not his fault, and that is a legitimate way to look at this. Life itself can abuse people, can't it? Life itself and circumstances can really hurt somebody. You're probably thinking of somebody right now that has, in a sense, and we'll put it in quotes, a raw deal. They're the ones who have lost their job. They're the ones who have been hit with cancer. They're the ones who the car broke down, and if it wasn't for bad luck, they'd not have any luck at all, right? They just have these awful circumstances that happen to them, and we are certainly called to help those people. And I think sometimes we get this idea that bad things only happen to good people, and as long as I serve God, those life circumstances will never happen. How many wish that was the case? But that's not the case. Good people also fall into really dark circumstances, really bad circumstances. And I'm really glad that as we walk through this dark world, Jesus Christ will hold our hands through it. That if I'm walking through the woods and I trip on a tree stump, I'm glad my dad is there to hold out his hand and pick me up. But a lot of people will say, well, why didn't your dad help you avoid the tree stump? He didn't plant it there. My no good brother Adam planted it, and so did I, my own sin. So he doesn't remove all the tree stumps, but at least he's there to help pick us up. So don't give him a black eye about the circumstances. Just be glad he's there to pick us up. But I think there's another way to look at this. Certainly it could be life circumstances, but it is really a picture of sin, okay? I think, in my own opinion. I think it's a picture of sin, where this guy, he's on his way, and sin, and I'm not blaming him, okay? I'm not saying he sinned in the passage, but it is really a picture of the thieves. Who's the thief? Who's the thief? The devil. We could say our flesh, we could say the world, we could say the devil. but how often the devil robs people. And what does he rob them of? What is he stealing from them? Their joy, their morality, their purity, their testimony, their family. And then what does he do after he has stolen that from them? What does he give them in exchange? So the guy, his I think his outer clothing in a sense, like the expensive robe. The thief took the expensive robe, and what did he give in return? Oh, he gave him something. A beating. He gave him a beating. You know, what you get from the devil is not what you expect. He'll give you something, all right. He'll give you pain and suffering and guilt and regret and no friends. And then what does he do? After he takes what he wants and then he gives something, what does he do? And what? And he leaves you. He's not a friend. And he departs and he leaves him what? Half dead. Give me a Bible character who fits this description. Got involved in sin, got beat up, and then was left half dead. Give me a Bible character that fits that description. Samson. Okay, who else? Prodigal son. Paul. Okay, Will? He's thinking. Who else? Lee? Jonah. My goodness. If there's anybody that's half dead, it's a guy that's living in a whale's belly. Okay, you think your house is small. That's a 1-bedroom. No bath. 1 bedroom. No porch. Job. Okay. Ivan. Joseph, not because of his own sin, but he's left in the pit. That would be circumstances more. Anybody? Jeffrey? Okay. Solomon. Yeah, Solomon. All the wives. So we can relate to this because we understand it. And then here you got the Bible characters, but then you've got all these people around us. I mean, go outside of the nation of America and you see these people all the time where they nationally have gone away from the Lord. And I don't think we're better as a person or as a people, but we see people that have been nationally have rejected the Lord and they are left half dead. Now we get to the next two people, the priest and the Levite, and a lot of these things have already been talked about. But the priest and the Levite, let's read verse 31 and 32 again. And by chance there came down a certain priest that way, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. And likewise a Levite, when he was at the place, came and looked on him and passed by on the other side. And we've kind of already touched on these guys, but the point was made they knew better. The point was made that if anybody could help, it would be them. In fact, and I haven't done a thorough study of this, but the priest and the Levite did a lot of medical things. They were there to help with judging whether leprosy was contagious or not. And so I'm not saying they were the physician, but they had some medical, at least experience. And so they would have been at least a little bit qualified to help the guy. But they say no. They're not going to help it. And I think there is a little bit of an indication of the Levite taking the step across the road, at least that's how I've always interpreted it, where the priest, he sees him and he looks away, and the Levite sees him and he's a little bit curious, and then he goes away. Does anybody have any more thoughts on it? We've already fleshed some of this stuff out, but any more thoughts about the priest and the Levite? Now, it's easy to beat them up, right? But I appreciate what Brittany said. I see myself here sometimes too. Brittany? Yeah? It is hard not to take that tack. They deserve it. People in the inner city who are addicted to welfare, addicted to drugs, addicted to all these things, they deserve it because of the choices that they have made. And I made all the right choices and I don't, whoa. But for the grace of God. But for the grace of God, we are where we are. Brother Hoffman? Okay, so there is an argument to say they would be unclean. And so their perspective was, if I help, what happens to me? Where we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but the Samaritan said, if I don't help, what happens to him? So if I help, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to be out some money? Am I going to be out some ceremony of cleanliness? Do I have to go back to the temple? What is it going to cost me? And he said, well, what's it going to cost him? He's going to die if I don't step in. Any other thoughts on the priest and the Levite? Brother Jeremy? Yeah. It's hard. And we can go ahead and talk about the Samaritan because it dovetails in what you're saying. So let's start reading verse 33. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him. As he journeyed, how hard is it to stop what you're doing? Or how easy is it to be distracted away from helping people and just be about our business? Just be about our schedule, our calendar, our time, our priorities, our schedule. And I'm telling you what, I get it, I understand it, I don't like it, and it's not right. But we live in an American society that loves to have things from 6 a.m. till late at night, and we've got our schedules, and this is how we're going to do it, and we've got what we want to do, our priorities, and then there's somebody on the side of the road with a flat tire, and I don't have time. I'm too busy. I've got things going on, and I don't necessarily think it's here with this next illustration, but a lot of society will put their family on hold for a career that lasts 30 or 40 years. Well, hey, I've got a career. I mean, I've got to build the ladder and climb the corporate, and they called me in. I mean, they called me in, and I'm on salary, and I've got to, they're on me at swing shifts, and, I'm a wreck during the day, but, I got to work through the night, and I've got to buy these things for a family that's going to grow up and leave. And then I don't have anything. And we don't have the time to stop and say, wait a minute, where is this bus heading? Where is this train going? I think that the fact that we are distracted away from people is a big deal in America. It used to be America was like the old country roads, and then, back in the backwoods, 30 miles an hour. When I was growing up, America was like 21. Today, America's like 41. I mean, just zook, 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 zook. You drive around even in Amro, very few people build houses with a front porch. I'm not saying it's a great sin, but people don't sit on the front porch anymore. You hardly see anybody out. Nobody's at the park. Nobody's there. They're in their house playing their video games, streaming their videos. They're rushing here, rushing there. I was talking to Will Case, and Will Case works in New York City right now. His boss, she's a producer or executive, something or other, but she gets paid very well. They have a car that picks her up and takes 3 hours to get to work. She does work all the way in the back of the car for 3 hours, works her normal 8-hour shift, and then drives back 3 hours working in the car. Now, I don't know the gal. I'm not trying to sit in judgment of her, but I say, wow, what a life. What are we doing as we're journeying, okay? So I think he said, even though I have a scheduling conflict, I'm going to still pay attention. And then he says, and when he saw him, he had compassion on him. Let me ask you a question. How powerful is the eye gate? When he saw him, he had compassion. I can tell you about the need, but once you see it, how powerful is it to allow God to show us? Brother Hoffman? The eye affects the heart. The eye affects the heart. Can you think of an example in the Bible, one of the stories in the Bible, where that was key? The eye affected the heart. Jesus feeding the multitudes, okay? Where the eye affected the heart. Okay, David, absolutely. David, all through David. Brother Torrey? Nehemiah, seeing the Jerusalem and seeing the state. Lot. How about Moses in the basket? When that princess is washing herself and the basket is there and they bring it to her and she opens that basket, and you could say also the ear, but it says when he cried, I mean, she's looking and she knows it's a Jewish baby, and right at that moment, Miriam comes and says, okay, here's the moment. He should die. Your dad said he should die. That's the law. He should die. So she got a decision to make. Should I intercede or not? And here's this little baby, looks up into her eyes, starts to cry, her eyes, her ears, and now she has a choice. She has an opportunity to do something. And Miriam says, should I call one of the Jewish ladies to nurse the child? Go. That one word, go. Total change in her heart. Total change. The whole Jewish race basically was saved at that moment. Now, God knew it, but her eye affected her heart. I cannot encourage you enough to get to the mission field. I can't encourage you enough to go on one of these trips and to see it for yourself. Anybody else on that? Brother Merle? Yep, absolutely. All right, he went to him, verse 34, bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his own beast, and brought him to an inn and took care of him. What does that tell you about his preparation? What does that tell you about what he was carrying with him? The things that he already had to help. What does that tell you about his equipment? Okay, perhaps he was well off. Somebody said something. Set for a long journey. Dan? Prepared. I don't want to read too much into this, okay? But in my mind's eye, this is my imagination, but in my mind's eye, I see the Levite and the priest carrying their book of the law, you know? And that is important. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, I think the Bible is very, very important, but I see them with the book of the law. I see them with their badge of, this is my duty at the temple. I get to light the candles, or I get to carry the wood, or I get to take down the curtains. I get to do these things. And they are, in a sense, culturally, supremely prepared to help people and to God, okay? So they have all these credentials to help people to God. The Samaritan, he says, well, I've got oil, and I've got a donkey, and I've got this, but what could I do? Well, you can do it all. I imagine Jewish culture said, these guys, look at them. They are so wonderful. They have all the tools to be used of God. And God says, in man's eyes, this is important, but in God's eyes, this is important. Don't belittle the things that you have. Don't despise the things that you have. God prepared him. God made you that way. God gave you that talent to open a door. God gave you the talent to cook in the kitchen. God gave you a talent to take an offering. God gave you a talent to do whatever it is. And he was prepared. He was ready to help. And I think in God's economy, if you got a barn in Amro, he says, okay, I'll use it. I'll use that barn to see many, many people get saved. You got a love for firearms, and Roger Sturtz loves firearms. He says, how do I use that? I love steaks, but I just get fat. That's my problem. But I think he was prepared, and he helped. What else? What else about the Samaritan? What else about the Samaritan? Brother Dave? Okay, yeah. Treat others how you want to be treated, Brother Hoffman. And a willing spirit, Brother Ben. Ooh. Yeah. Let's talk about that. How much it actually cost the Samaritan, okay? Did he know up front how much it was going to cost to help? Like, I know it's going to cost this much, and that's what I'm going to give. I'm guessing not. I'm thinking, like he said, it was open-ended. That I'm going to help this, I'm going to do all these things, but I'm not going to put a cap on how much I'm going to give. I'm not going to put a cap on how much I'll surrender. I'm not going to put a cap on how much this is going to cost me and in my sacrifice. I'm going to just say it's open-ended. That's hard. That's hard. And that's hard to do for God. It's even harder to do for others. But the truth is, doing it for God and doing it for others is the same thing. If you give a cup of cold water in my name, it's just like you did it unto me. You'll no wise lose your reward. And you can't say, well, I only sacrifice to God and I don't sacrifice to people, because that doesn't work. That's how Jesus was. He says, hey, if you've done it unto them, you've done it unto me. You don't have to raise your hand, but how many have been put into a situation where you say, wow, I tried to help somebody. I was in a ministry. I made a decision for Christ, whatever it may be, and it cost me a lot more than I thought. And it was a lot more painful than I thought. And it didn't turn out as good as I thought, but I'm really glad I did it. Because it wasn't about me, and I wasn't trying to get a payment. I just trying to serve God. I just tried to serve people. And somebody said it early on about being messy. About being messy. It's not fun to treat a wound. It's not fun to treat a wound in the ER, let alone on the side of the road in Jerusalem at 2000, BC, or whatever it was, 3 BC when this happened. They didn't have hardly anything. And so you're dressing the wound, you're trying to help as much as you can. It stinks, it's terrible, it's awful, you have no running water. This is a big deal. And I will caution you, if you go on a missions trip, it's probably not going to be the Taj Mahal Hotel. Now, we take good care of you. I'm not saying that we abuse you in any way or something like that, but it's hard. It's difficult. I tried to go on a missions trip, and I prayed about the money, and God didn't send it. Well, you might have to get a second job. You might have to work at it. It's hard. It's difficult. Who in the Bible could we cite as an example of this idea where they worked with people, boy, and it really cost them a lot. It really caused them a lot of grief. Jesus is the big one, but Sarah? Jacob. Very good. Okay. Who else worked with people and it cost them a lot? Dan? Moses? Oh, my. Moses? Who else? Worked with people, but it cost them a lot. Joseph, Paul. Paul tries to preach to people, and he's run out of town again and again and again. Jeffrey? Jeremiah, let down into a dungeon, sunk down in the pit. Dan? Stephen, Paul and Silas. That is the MO. That is the modus operandi in a sense. We're going to go and we're going to preach and we're going to help people and we're going to get grief. But what would be some encouragements? If somebody came up to you and said, wow, this Sunday school class is a lot harder than I thought. This missions trip is a lot more difficult than I thought. I mean, I thought I would just give up my Starbucks and then I'd have enough money to go on a missions trip. But that didn't work, and I had to really work and really struggle. And I started to read my Bible, and man, things went haywire. And I started to discipline the children and try to be the husband I needed to be. And it's hard. It's difficult to follow God in this day and age. What would you tell somebody who is facing that? It's costing me a lot more pain than I anticipated. What encouragement would you give them, Scott? Be not weary in well-doing. What kind of encouragement would you give them to keep going? Yep. Yeah, okay. What other encouragement would you give to people to keep going? Brother Schertzer? Yeah. That's right. I got to tell you this story. I was going to tell you these stories Sunday night, but I got to tell you this story. 2 weeks ago, we had a gentleman come in, and he came to, I think, the 8 a.m. With a friend, and came in a little bit late, and so I was already up here. And so after the service, I went and talked to him, and he introduced himself, and I started asking him questions about where do you live. I live in Oshkosh, the conversation got around to, have you accepted Christ as your Savior? And he said, absolutely. So, oh, wow, well, what happened? What was the situation? He said, well, I'm 30 years old. Back about 14, 15 years ago, Pastor Randy King was preaching over there, and I came on the buses, and I got saved. And I got away from the Lord, and that's wrong for me, but I've always been drawn back to this church, and hopefully I'll still be coming. God does that. God does that. I mean, he knew exactly. It was after one of the sermons about salvation, exactly what I was talking about. Absolutely, I have no doubt in my mind. I have no doubt that I'm straying from the Lord, but like I said, you don't see that. What other encouragements would you give to somebody? Anybody else? Father Paul. Yeah. It's never overlooked. Even a sparrow falling to the ground, Jesus sees. He's going to notice your sacrifice. Brother Scott? Yeah. He's going to give you a way of escape. He's going to give you the strength. Now, we got a few minutes, and I want to point something out to you that God showed me a few years ago that just kind of stood out in the passage. There is actually another man in the story. Because we've got the traveler, we've got the priest, we've got the Levite, and we've got the Samaritan, but we have the innkeeper. And the innkeeper was told the same words as the Samaritan. So the Bible sums up what the Samaritan did by those few words. He took care of him. So he bound up his wounds, he put on oil, he put him on his beast, and he brought him to the inn, and he took care of him. So that's the summation of what the Samaritan did. The innkeeper was told the same thing. Take care of him. So you have a priest who did nothing, you have a Levite who did nothing, you have a traveler who got all messed up, living him half dead. You got a Samaritan who worked and struggled and sacrificed and was in a lot of pain to take care of him. And then you've got an innkeeper, a host, who also took care of him. But what's the difference between the Samaritan and the host? Lee? Yeah. Chris? In a sense, the innkeeper got paid. And I don't want to put him down because he did his job. But he says anything, and you could look at it in a positive way. Maybe that's the way we should look at it, in a positive way, that the Samaritan is providing all of it, and all we have to do is be an innkeeper. And that's good. Hopefully that's the way it should be taken, that you're just a vessel. But if you look at it a different perspective, we kind of have a choice. We can ignore the problem, or we can help, expecting a reward, or expecting to be repaid, expecting some service to come our way. Appreciation, notice, But I think if we go with this attitude, we probably won't continue much because there isn't always payment. Brother Paul? Yeah. 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 Brother Dave? Yeah. So how much? Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. So how many would like to put the innkeeper in a positive light? That's a few of us. How many think he should be in a negative light? Just me. Okay, that's all right. But you know, it is a fascinating passage of Scripture to help us to know it does take effort and does take time, but it's always, always rewarded and provided by God. Any last comments? I saw a hand over there, Brother Hoffman. Brother Paul? Yeah. Right. Yeah. 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 Brother Paul? Yeah. And you know, those people, that man who is on the road half dead, he cannot get up and go to the Samaritan. The Samaritan's got to go to him. And I'm so glad God tells us, go out into the highways and hedges and compel them to come in. We've got to go to them. They're never going to come to us. But we've got the answer. And Jesus found us. He came to find us. We can find them as well. Let's go ahead and stand. Let's sing. Every time I say that, Phil gets cringy. He's like, what? All right, we got to sing it. Will be worth it all. It will be worth it all when we see Jesus. Trials will seem so small when we see Christ. One glimpse of his dear face, all sorrow will erase. So bravely run the race till we see Christ. You're dismissed.